Hello guys, welcome back to another exciting Naruto fanfiction. Heart. If you're enjoying this series, don't forget to hit the like button, share this video with your friends, and subscribe for more amazing Naruto, which is what if Naruto's harem started with Suki, Uchiha and Sakura. Part 2. Now let's start the fanfic. Well, perhaps walking was an understatement. In reality, she used her Chidori sharp spear to pierce through the door and into Orochimaru's arm, which he had raised in an effort to protect himself as she sliced through the rest of her door with her sword. The rest of the door crumpled from the force of her sword strikes in Chidori. There's nothing more that you can teach me. Though that trivial detail was barely noted by either of them. They had far more important matters to worry about than a destroyed door. Orochimaru, to her surprise, said nothing at first as he grimaced in pain and tried to free himself from her Chidori. I was willing to give you my body before, if it meant that I could have my revenge. That was no longer the case. Now that you're weaker than me and I've seen what a shell of your former self you've become, there is no need for that anymore. Orochimaru was so weak that the man couldn't even free himself from her Chidori that had pierced through his arm. After all, you only wanted the Sharingan. When you couldn't steal it from my brother, you came after me. It was pathetic. I owe you nothing and I don't care for the way you do things. That was putting it mildly. This abomination of a man disgusted her. She might have surrendered to darkness for the sake of her revenge, but Suki did it for a reason. She was going to avenge her family. So that they could finally know peace and Itachi would never be able to hurt anything else. Orochimaru did it out of arrogance. You slither from hideout to hideout, conducting your experiments, and toying with people's lives for your own selfish purposes. She charges at him, intent on ending his miserable existence. You make me sick. Just as she was about to kill him, something ejected from Orochimaru's mouth though. It was perhaps the most disgusting thing she had ever seen. A giant snake with a body made up of thousands of smaller snakes and Orochimaru's head. It lunges at her, but Suki manages to dodge and slice through several of the smaller snakes with her sword. A snake slithering on the ground can only dream of flying like a hawk through the sky. She glares at him as activates the next stage of her curse mark. Because it will never do so itself. She could feel it, her features changing into a demonic version of the very same animal she had just spoken of. The snakes and Orochimaru lash out at her, but her sword slices through the smaller snakes with ease. At first, she thought that she had killed him. That's she heard a sickening laughter and saw the snakes, blood evaporating into the air. Looks like it's finally taking effect. And she found it was impossible to move. The body fluid of the great white snake evaporates into the air and acts as a paralyzing agent. That was the only explanation Orochimaru gave her before the giant head lunged at her, and then the next thing she knew, she was in a very strange place. It was like something out of a nightmare. The floor of it seemed to be made out of snake-like creatures that were made out of what she supposed were intestines, but Suki couldn't be sure as the repulsive creatures wrapped themselves around her and Orochimaru. This is another dimension. Orochimaru laughs from underneath the snakes which now obscured most of his body. This is where the transference ritual will take place. More mounds appeared behind her. Human-sized mounds with human faces and bodies trapped inside the snakes. Orochimaru's previous vessels. Your visual prowess is magnificent. He stares at her like a starving dog would a piece of steak, but she remains unmoved. I'll finally have those precious eyes of yours. He keeps creeping closer to her, not at all impacted by the snakes writhing around his body. Neither was she though, for that was the moment she struck. When Suki finally kills Orochimaru, she realizes she wasn't alone. Kabuto was watching her. He had seen everything, or at least what was left of the great white snake's body. Kabuto, is that you? She walks past him and out of the room. Kabuto looks at her with frightened eyes, and Suki had to admit that she enjoyed seeing that expression on his face. Are you Orochimaru or Suki? The Uchiha wanted to pawn that off to Orochimaru's influence on her, but she knew better. She'd simply spent too much time in the sound. Which one do you think I am? She smiles at him slyly and activates her Sharingan, trapping Kabuto in her mind and showing him exactly what had happened. Orochimaru had tried to take her body, but she had used visual prowess and will to take control of the Sanin's dimension, transforming the pink snakes into black ones, which in turn soon morphed into horrifying beasts that consumed her former instructor, and that was the end of the legendary Sanin. Once she releases Kabuto from her little show, Suki just walks off, leaving him there. He was no threat to her and she had work to do. Now, it was time to find Suigetsu and then later on, Karen and Jugo. A few days later, Naruto was back in the leaf and without any real leads at the moment as to where Suki went. By the time he woke up, only a miles away from the village, he knew that the sound ninjas had all likely evacuated, and so he was back to square one. There were feathers by you when you woke up. Though at least Kurama was trying to be helpful. Naruto really didn't understand what feathers had to do with anything, but the Nine Tails was right about that much. There really had been a couple of giant feathers laying by him. Feathers that were larger than he had ever seen before. He just had no idea why that mattered. Yeah, so, feathers were kinda the last thing on his mind. They had Raven's fur scent on them and were unnaturally large. Naruto blinks at that realization. I believe that she has a hawk summon. Similar to how you can summon toads. That would explain a lot. That meant that Suki had spared his life again. She had him trapped in her genjutsu. The woman could have easily killed him, but instead of doing that she had her summon give him a ride back to the leaf. She did care. On some level, she cared. Naruto didn't care what she said about it being a whim. This time wasn't a whim. Kurama was right, but unfortunately Naruto didn't have a damn clue what he was going to do about any of that. Suki cared, but he didn't know where she was or how to actually reach her. You're right. That's when Naruto noticed the sky. The colors, they look like blood. She brought me back here, but I've got a bad feeling about this. Look at the sky. He knew that such things shouldn't matter. The sky's color could change at any time, but it felt like something big had happened. Kurama must have felt it too. Something has happened. Because he said exactly what was on Naruto's mind at the moment. Naruto sighs as he watches the sky and touches his lips. The pleasant tingling sensation and the memory of her lips against his own was at odds with the growing feeling of dread inside his stomach. How could things have gone so wrong? I swear, if that snake has done anything to her, I'll kill him. Naruto didn't really know how much time Orochimaru had left, but he knew that it wasn't much. 3 years. That's what the pervy sage had said. 3 years had already come and gone. Suki was living on borrowed time. Unless she really mean what she said about Orochimaru. Naruto supposed that he was still in shock. Since when do you use genjutsu? He'd never really seen her use it outside of the academy, and even then that was just for tests. Doesn't matter. She sighed as her hand glided up his arm, over his shoulders, and towards his cheek. It's sweet that this is what you think about. She leaned closer to him and brushed her lips against his ear again. Do you want to know a secret? The shivers were back. He didn't know why. It wasn't that he was afraid of her, but whenever she did that it made him shiver. What's the secret? He looked at her uncertainly. She smiles at him. You don't have to worry about Orochimaru taking my body. She rolled over until she was straddling his waist. After I've learned what I need from him, I'm going to kill him. She brushed her lips against his. So go to sleep. Was Suki really going to kill him, or had that just been something that the woman had said to trick him? To trick him into not chasing after her anymore. He didn't know, and that thought disturbed him. He couldn't just sit around here doing nothing though. Come on. Let's go. Naruto sneaks out of the Leaf Village. We'll find her. Believe it. The blonde didn't allow Kurama any time to protest. Nor did he bother consulting with Tsunade about leaving. His gut was telling him that something big had just happened and he had learned to trust his instincts. Besides, they had to save Suki. So that was why he ran off as fast he could to try to find her. There was no way that he could take any more of just waiting for a lead to appear. He'd find his own lead. Elsewhere, Itachi blinks as he and Kisame enter a room that he knew to be Orochimaru's. The man's foul chakra still hung heavily in the air, after all. Though what he found disturbed him. It looks like you didn't have to worry about the brat, after all. Kisame laughs as he stares at the remains of Orochimaru's corpse. The great white snake. Seems like she had it handled. That was true. Itachi knew that Suki now used a sword and traces of her chakra still lingered in the air. It seemed as though his sister had actually attacked Orochimaru from the way the door was shattered. An unexpectedly bold move. He nods at his partner. I'm impressed that she managed to kill him, even if he was already ill. That couldn't have been easy feat, and Itachi felt a surge of pride for his sister. Though we should head back to headquarters. If Orochimaru was already dead, that meant his sister was on the move. She'd find him sooner or later. There was no need to stay at this hideout. Right. Kisame grins at him. Maybe we can stop and get some food on the way. Itachi shakes his head in amusement as he takes some of his medicine and the two men walk off together. Do you ever think with anything other than your stomach? It was probably beneath him to engage in such banter, but he was a dead man soon enough anyway. If Suki was truly powerful enough to defeat Orochimaru, then she was certainly far closer to her goal than the woman likely realized. Her increasing power, combined with his failing health, meant that there was only one possible outcome for their fight. His death. Course, I do. He smirks at Itachi. I love a good fight, and sometimes I think with my other sword as well. To wit, the elder Uchiha sibling could only roll his eyes. Why was it that so many talented ninjas were absolute perverts? Correlation did not equal causation, but he really was noticing a disturbing pattern here. Itachi shakes his head. Kisame, if we're going to eat, I don't wish to hear any more conversation about your sword usage in the immediate future. Or ever. PFT. Kisame laughs. You're just jealous. The elder Uchiha raises an eyebrow as his eyes flash red. Childish. Kisame. Truly. The man sometimes acted like he was still a chunin. Though if you really wish to compare such things, we can do so inside my Tsukuyomi. That silenced his partner quite nicely, Itachi thinks to himself as the two of them continue on their trek. In blissful silence. A short while later, Kabuto sighs. He still couldn't believe it. Orochimaru was really gone, and now, the sound was without a leader. It was a heartbreaking day. He's not really dead. Kana looks up at him, barely holding back her tears. She absorbed him. That was true, but it didn't really help them. Orochimaru was no longer, really, there in any meaningful way. Everything that he had worked for had been for nothing. Wait, it didn't have to be that way. He could carry on in Orochimaru's stead. After all, he had been the other ninja's right-hand man. He knew exactly what the Sannin had been up to at the time of his death. There was no reason for Orochimaru's will to die with him. That's true. I'm going to go and look over his notes. Kabuto shakes his head sadly. His legacy can still be preserved, if nothing else. That's true. Kana forces herself to smile. He'd like that. I knew that she was bad news. He never should have brought her here. Sadly, this was one point that Kabuto couldn't disagree with her on. If Orochimaru had left that woman back in the Leaf Village, none of this would have happened. Though Kabuto could certainly understand why his late mentor had brought Suki here. The Sharingan was certainly an enticing prize. It was only natural that he would covet it. Though it was coveting the Sharingan that had ultimately led to his demise. Later that day, Suki finds it. She finally found where Suigetsu was being kept hidden. The Hazuka was being kept in a tank of water. Which would have been more disturbing, if he wasn't from a clan so closely associated with that element. Alright. She raises her sword towards the glass. Let's get started. Her words at least eased the silence in the room as she shattered the glass with one strike and Suigetsu falls out of it. Water spilled everywhere, but that wasn't her primary concern. So you're Suki, huh? The fact that Suigetsu was standing behind her with his fingers pointed at her ear like a gun was. You're the one that Orochimaru wouldn't shut up about. Normally, that would have struck her as ridiculous. A man making that gesture as if it was some sort of threat, but he was a Hazuka. Suigetsu really could end her life in this position. Of course, she knew better than to show any fear in front of him. And I'm also the one who killed him. That was perhaps the fastest way to sign her own death warrant. Really? He sounds slightly surprised, but doesn't lower his weapon. Well, don't get any crazy ideas about me owing you anything. We all wanted to kill him. You were just the one who was closest to him. So you were the only one who had a real chance to do it. That might be accurate, but Suki didn't care. If it wasn't for me, you'd still be in that tank. You're coming with me on a mission. She didn't bat an eyelash at his nudity. To kill Itachi. Suigetsu raises an eyebrow. Why would I do that? You're such a bossy princess. Whatever. Suki didn't care what he thought of her. Because you want the swords of the mist swordsman. Suki smirks at him. Kisame has the Samahata and he also happens to be my brother's partner in the Akatsuki. That worked like a charm. Alright. He lowers his hand. I'll go with you to get the sword and because frankly I don't have anything better to do, but you aren't the boss of me. Now, she was beginning to understand why Orochimaru had put this idiot in the tank. Whatever. Just put some pants on. She tosses some into his face. Why? Afraid? You'll see something you like, princess. He smirks at her, but quickly dresses nonetheless. He might enjoy taunting her, but Suigetsu was apparently practical enough not to go around walking for too long. Though Suki suspected he might be something of an exhibitionist, that really wasn't her problem. Hours later, she and Suigetsu were on their way toward the prison. The prison where they would find Jugo and Karen. Of course, her partner had wandered off in search of water. So Suki was waiting for him to return. It's not really his fault. She sighs and leans against nearest tree. He is a Hazuka. Suigetsu's body chemistry was just different than most people's. That was, after all, the main reason why Orochimaru had been interested in him in the first place. His water abilities and swordsmanship were a force to reckon with. Unfortunately, he was even more annoying than Naruto, and unlike that blonde, Suigetsu didn't give a damn about her. He was essentially her mercenary and his kisses didn't taste like milk and honey. Her mind was drifting towards Naruto too much. I never should have kissed him. That had been a foolish impulse on her part. Perhaps, Itachi was right. Maybe, she really was his foolish little sister. Though that wouldn't stop her from killing him. She was so distracted by her thoughts, that she didn't sense him coming. Until it was too late. I got you. And a blonde blur threw itself onto her. Naruto had been looking for what seemed like ever, but he had finally found her. He'd found Suki and she was right underneath him, and well, she looked rather surprised at his appearance. You really are such a loser. Her eyes bleed ruby red. You should know better than to attack someone like me, head on. Genjutsu. Sharingan. He was inside his mind again. Immediately, Naruto whirls around. He knew that Suki had to be around here somewhere. You're getting better at recognizing when you're under the influence of Genjutsu. A familiar voice calls out. That's when he turns around and sees Suki. Only she was dressed very differently than before. Gone was the white shirt and the dark blue pants that Orochimaru had given her, replaced by the outfit she had worn as a genin. The blue shirt with the high collar and the white shorts that she had worn years ago. Only now, they were decidedly the wrong size. They might have fit her well as a genin, but not now. Though he supposed that technically she was still a genin, it was the principle of the thing. Wait, he was getting distracted. Yeah, I guess I've been getting a lot of practice at it recently. Way too distracted by the fact those shorts barely covered her thighs and that shirt was squeezing her now ample bosom rather tightly. It wasn't that he was looking on purpose. That wasn't it. Naruto wasn't like the pervy sage or Kakashi sensei. It was just kinda hard not to notice. Yes, you have. Suki smiles as she walks over to him and caresses his cheek. Isn't this what you wanted? For everything to go back to exactly the way it was before. When had her skin gotten that soft? Had it always been that way, or was she just manipulating his mind to think it was that soft? Did it really matter? Naruto just nods dumbly. Well, yeah, though I don't mind if you wear clothes that actually fit you. You don't have to wear the same outfit. It was a stupid thing to comment on, but right now he was trying his best not to stare. 3 years really was a long time. While Sakura still mostly looked the same as she did when they were Genin on Team 7, Suki decidedly did not. Pervy Sage would have liked her outfit a little too much really. I suppose that's true. She wraps her arms around his neck and rests her head on his shoulder. And I killed Orochimaru. His eyes widen at that. Did you really kill him? Was she lying to him? No way. Suki nods as she embraces him more. He's dead, so you don't have to worry about me anymore. Shocking him further by brushing her lips against his once more. So stop chasing me. He didn't really know what it was about the kiss, but something inside him snapped. This time, he kissed back. He really kissed back. It was probably shock that made Suki return the kiss this time, but Naruto wasn't going to argue. She tasted like dark melted chocolate and cinnamon flavored candy. He wasn't sure why. Maybe that was by design. He wasn't really sure how thorough this illusion was, but her lips felt soft against his. Soft and warm. Such a contrast to the harsh strikes and words that she always hurled at him during their fights. They were always fighting. I'm never going to stop chasing you. They should really stop doing that so much, but they were always locked in a battle of wills. If she would stop being such a stubborn ice princess, maybe they'd get along better. Though she wasn't icy now. Why? She was warm and soft in his arms and kissing back between her questions, and it felt really good. Why are you so obsessed with me? Because you're my friend. The words came out of his mouth automatically. They felt hollow though, and they ended the kisses. Suki, if anything, looked angry at that response. Liar. And before Naruto knew what was happening, everything went blank. Suki had knocked him unconscious and released the genjutsu. Suki feels herself twitch. His friend. She didn't know why the words made her feel so angry, but they did. Friends didn't kiss in the way they had, even if Suki had only done it to distract him. Whatever. It didn't matter. Ouch. Wonderful. Now Suigetsu was back. What did the blonde do to deserve the knockout? He tilts his head curiously. She was not in the mood to explain this Suigetsu. It was none of his business. It doesn't matter. Suki sighs as she summons Garuda again. Take him as close to the leaf as you can get him without being seen. This was getting to be a habit. Well, at least her genjutsu was definitely working. She was now able to defeat Naruto faster and without having to throw a real punch. That was progress. In the back of her mind though, Suki mentally winces as she watches Garuda fly off with the blonde. She should have killed him. It would have given her stronger eyes, but once again, she hadn't. So did you break up with him or something? Suigetsu smiles at her merrily. Suki glares at Suigetsu. I said it doesn't matter. Chidori. She fires off her attack in a blaze of fury, making the prodigy in the art of murder scream. Holy shit. I guess he broke up with you then. Suigetsu apparently was a masochist, it seemed. Well, you know, if you stopped freaking electrocuting people so much, that might improve your chances. And upon hearing that, Suki twitches and fires off another Chidori. She could only hope that she killed Itachi soon. Suigetsu was really annoying. Well, maybe if she was lucky Karen and Jugo would be more normal. At least that's what she hoped as drags Suigetsu with her towards the prison and the rest of her team. The team that would help her kill Itachi. A miracle. That's what it was, Suki decides. It was a miracle that she hadn't strangled Suigetsu on their way to the prison, but somehow they had both made it in one piece. Go and find Jugo. The sooner she killed Itachi, the better. I'll look for Karen. This place is only so big and we'll cover more ground faster, if we split up. Because her patience was already running low with the Hazuka. He rolls his eyes. I told you that you aren't the boss of me, but if it'll help me find those swords faster, then whatever. Honestly, why were men always so obsessed with their swords? Suki loved her own sword. It was perfectly crafted to be a deadly and efficient weapon in battle, but she was also able to form a sword of sorts out of her Chidori sharp spear if she lost it. So she didn't feel the emotional attachment to her blade that Suigetsu had for these swords he was so fixated on. It didn't matter, she supposed. Right now, Suki was on a mission to find Karen. With that thought in mind, she walks through the prison's hallways. Let us out. She was far from alone though. Help us. Their screams, pleas, and threats were enough to make the Uchiha woman feel as though her ears might actually bleed. Suki briefly allows herself to feel a stab of pity for these people. Most of them were sound ninjas who had for one reason or another displeased Orochimaru. Though some she suspected might have been kidnapped purely to be human guinea pigs for the deceased Sanin's sick experiments. It was best to ignore them for now. Now, where is she? Finding Karen took priority, but the raven-haired ninja decides that she would let them out later. Orochimaru was dead. There was no need to have them all die here. Criminals or not, this was not a fate fit for animals. Let alone people. The scent of death, blood, and decay was everywhere. You there. So were chemicals. Definitely. Experiments then. Who are you? Suki didn't have much time to ponder this development before a feminine voice interrupts her thoughts. She feels herself smirk. Karen, it had to be. This one wasn't beginning to be release or threatening her. That meant that she had to be the wardrobe. With that thought in mind, she whirls around to face her. Activating her Sharingan. I think that you already know who I am. There could be no doubt as to her identity now. And to answer your next question, Orochimaru is dead. More importantly though, I know who you are. Her new teammate, Karen. A short while later, Naruto wakes up back in the forest of death with a few feathers by him again. He couldn't believe this. Suki had done it again. You deserved that one. Great, and now Kurama was going to start in on him. You called her your friend after that. Well yeah, of course, Suki was his friend. Though he was getting really annoyed by all these sneaky tricks she was pulling. Kissing him, wearing that tiny outfit, and knocking him out. Enough was enough. The next time he saw her, Naruto was dragging back to the leaf by her hair, if he had to. Good. You're finally going to exert dominance. Wait. What? What was the fox talking about now? A female like that will get angry, if you try to do so at first, and likely stay that way for a while. The only way you're ever going to be her mate though is by proving yourself at least her equal in combat. Mate. What was Kurama trying to say? He didn't actually think that Suki wanted to be his girlfriend, did he? I'm not trying to be her boyfriend. Naruto was just trying to get her home. I'm trying to save her from that freak and get her home. Suki had said that Orochimaru was dead though. Was that actually true? The blonde couldn't be sure. His teammates was many things, but she had never been a liar before. Then again, Suki had never kissed him like she had been recently either. Oh, and she most definitely wouldn't wear outfits that were at least 2 or 3 sizes too small on her. The Nine Tails apparently wasn't done taunting him though. You're delusional and your mate is in need of a good smack to her hindquarters. Oh yeah, the perverted fox was out of his mind, if he actually thought that Suki was going to let him spank her. That was probably the fastest way to a Chidori in an extremely uncomfortable place that Naruto could think of. She might be willing to kiss him to trick him, but Suki was not the sort of person who would do any of that crazy stuff in pervy sage's books. Stop being a pervert. Naruto fails in outrage. We need to tell Granny Tsunade about this. He mentally winces at the thought of doing exactly that. Tsunade wasn't going to be happy about him sneaking off, but Naruto had to do something. Kurama must have realized what he was thinking though. I'm sure the old hag will be far more interested in Orochimaru's death than you sneaking off. Which was probably as close to being comforting as the Nine Tails could get. Naruto just hoped that he was right. I guess we'll find out. And with that, he swiftly departs for Tsunade's office. He had no idea how he got himself in these situations. Oh wait. Yes, he did. This was all Suki's fault. He really needed to get a leash or something for her. Almost as soon as the thought occurred to him though, Naruto immediately regretted it. Damn pervy sage for making him read those novels. Back at one of the Sound's hideouts, Kabuto was holding an emergency meeting. There was every chance that chaos was about to erupt, but somehow he would manage. He would ensure that Lord Orochimaru's work was not in vain. I have unfortunate news. The silver-haired man sighs heavily. It seems that Lord Orochimaru has passed on. He debates for a moment as everyone stares at him in shock. Should he tell them that it was Suki who did it? Would it be better to just pretend that it was natural causes that had done him in? That he had merely delayed the transfer for too long? Some of them might actually try to follow the last Uchiha, if they found out how the legendary Sannin had met his end. That was something that he couldn't let happen, and as he looks at Kana's eyes, that notion was only further reaffirmed in his mind. Someone beats him to it though. Is it true? One of Orochimaru's many loyal followers. Is Lord Orochimaru really dead? How did he die? His mentor had had many of them. People such as Suigetsu and Sasuke had been the exception to the rule. Most of the Sound ninjas were quite happy to follow Orochimaru's will, and those that weren't, they were sent to the prison. Even the most disobedient and weak ninja could find a use in the prison. After all, medical experiments required bodies. Lots of bodies, and thanks to the Sound Village's more disobedient ninjas, there was generally a consistent supply of them. It is true. Kana's voice cuts through the confusion. Lord Orochimaru is dead. I saw the body and helped to bury it myself. That removed all doubts from their fellow Sound villagers' mind. If nothing else, Kana was highly respected in this village, and she was known to be amongst Orochimaru's most loyal followers. If she said that the Sannin was dead, he was dead. It really was as simple as that. Kabuto pushes his glasses up the bridge of his nose. She's correct. It was a common motion he did, but this time it held a dual purpose. Orochimaru is dead. To readjust his glasses and to give him a chance to hold back tears. He delayed the transfer too long. We thought that there was more time. He wouldn't cry in front of them. Kabuto simply didn't have the luxury of mourning in such a public fashion. He had a village to lead and Orochimaru's legacy to think of. Kabuto would grieve privately later. What are we going to do now? A grunt squeal is heard. He'd likely either end up as cannon fodder or one of their experiments at some point. Well, at least he would serve a purpose, Kabuto thinks to himself. Still, the man did at least deserve an answer to his question. We carry on exactly as we did before. Kabuto smiles. In accordance to Lord Orochimaru's will. As his second in command, it falls to me to lead this village. And if anyone has an issue with that, you will face my genjutsu. Kana smirks at the crowd. Wisely, everyone seemed to accept that. Whether it was to honor Orochimaru's wishes, fear of Kana, or shock didn't really matter. For the moment, all was well. He'd just have to deal with any potential rebellions later. Back at the prison, Karen eyes Suki Uchiha warily. She believed her when the woman said that Orochimaru was dead, but the redhead also knew that it was more likely than not that his killer was standing right next to her. What do you want? Though the other ninja did have really cool chakra. Why'd you come all the way out here? She had to give Suki that much. Everything about her was predatory. The last female Uchiha truly reminded her of either a jungle cat or a big snake, coiled and ready to strike. Though not necessarily at her. Suki smiles at her. Well, I want your help. The raven-haired ninja was suddenly circling Karen. To kill Itachi. Your sensory and medical skills could prove invaluable to me. Well, that was an unfamiliar development with Karen. Most people wanted to use her, but then again, what did she really have to lose? If Orochimaru was truly dead, there was nothing keeping her here other than she had nowhere else to go in particular. Why should I help you? Her eyes narrow. You killed Orochimaru and he saved me from a life of being nothing more than a tool. A human chew toy at that. A human chew toy who probably wouldn't live long enough to see her 20th birthday, if she were being honest. Then again, most ninjas didn't. That was just the way of things. Suki smirks at her. A fact which Karen didn't know whether to feel relieved or uneasy about. Well, if you prefer, you can always just stay here. Rot in prison to serve a corpse, or you can help me kill a murderer. That was a good point. Though what would happen after Itachi was dead? Oh yes, Karen knew exactly what Itachi Uchiha had done to the rest of his family, and it sickened her. That didn't mean she'd have a future after he was killed though. Suki might just dispose of her immediately afterwards and she'd be powerless to stop her. If I help you, what do I get out of it? She looks at her. Suki shrugs gracefully as if she wasn't bothered by that question at all. Assuming the leaf lets me return when this is all said and done, you can stay in my district. She smiles at her. You can have a home, and if not, well, we'll travel together and I'll ensure that no one else bites you without your permission. Karen didn't really have any reason to believe Suki. The woman could be lying, but really why bother? If she wanted to, the other woman could kill her right now or force her to come along anyway. That meant that it was more likely than not that Suki was actually telling her the truth and that she was sincere about her promises. Deal. She smiles at her. Suki nods at her. Good. Now, where is Jugo? Jugo. Was the other woman out of her mind? Jugo was very sweet about 90% of the time. The other 10% of the time, well, Karen was far more afraid of him than she was of Suki. At least Suki was in control of herself. Jugo wasn't in those moments. I don't think that you really want Jugo to come with us. She shakes her head quickly. He can't always control himself. Suki smiles at her like a cat that had caught a mouse. Exactly. It's his chakra's adaptability and his personality's unpredictable nature that makes him useful to me. Had she lost her mind? Well, maybe. Suki could handle Jugo. If he lost control, the ninja who had killed Orochimaru obviously knew what she was doing. No one could accuse her of being weak. Alright. Karen sighs. Come with me and I'll let him out. Suki nods approvingly at him. Excellent, and who knows? Suigetsu might have already found him. Now, that made Karen twitch. Suki couldn't possibly be serious about letting that creep come with them. Naruto was inside Tsunade's office, and to say the least, the busty ninja was pleased. It looked like she was torn between relief, anger, and worry. Naruto, you can't just go wandering off like that. She slams her fist into her desk. The Akatsuki are looking for tailed beasts. That was true, but that wouldn't stop Naruto. Orochimaru might or might not be dead, but Suki was still out there somewhere and she was hunting a clan slayer. She could get herself killed. It was obvious that she had become a lot stronger over the years, but Itachi had killed an entire clan. Was she really ready for that? He wonders to himself. The answer to that question was yes, though. I know, but if I hadn't, we wouldn't know that Orochimaru is dead. She could. She had killed Orochimaru, after all. It's only natural to want to protect your mate, or as humans would say, lover. Of course, Kurama's commendatory was not helping. Ever since Suki's genjutsu kisses, his mind and body were constantly at war. His mind was telling him that she had just been doing it to trick him, and damn it, it had worked. His body just liked remembering what it felt like, even if it was all an illusion. She had used genjutsu on him, but it had all felt so real. Just as real as any of their accidental kisses. Though apparently, there was a very big difference between an accidental kiss and an on-purpose kiss. Kurama didn't care for being ignored. Humans are pathetically skittish about mating. For his part though, Naruto just wished the Nine Tails would shut up for a little while. It's a wonder that any of you ever managed to breed. That word definitely brought on way too many images. Naruto wasn't Jiraiya or even Kakashi by any stretch of the imagination, but now he had a pretty good idea of exactly what Suki had meant by restoring her clan, and he also knew what she looked like in really tiny shorts. Shut up. That was it. Naruto had had enough. He quickly severs the mental bond between them. At least for a little while, he needed some damn privacy. He looks at Tsunade warily. So what are we going to do about this? Because Naruto frankly had no clue. If she was able to put you under genjutsu, she was at a minimum alive after the transfer should have occurred. The fifth Hokage lets out a wary sigh. Which means there is a decent chance that she was telling the truth about Orochimaru. She nods at the thought. I'll put out a bulletin informing everyone of this possibility. Well, that was something, and he was lucky in a way. Granny Tsunade wasn't mad at him, but he still had to find Suki. Before it was too late, Suki follows Karen to one of the cells. There she saw Suigetsu talking to a rather large man with orange hair, and by the looks of things, Jugo was going to be difficult. Though not for the reasons she had initially anticipated. Sorry, princess. Suigetsu shrugs as he looks at her. The guy just won't budge. That was odd that someone like the prodigy in the art of murder would just give up like that. It made Suki curious as she strides closer to Jugo's cell. It was strange. He had such a panicked expression in his seemingly gentle eyes. This was the man who could turn into a homicidal maniac as quickly as she could tie her sandals. Didn't he understand what was being offered? If you help me kill Itachi, you can have your freedom. Maybe Suigetsu was just an idiot and hadn't explained things clearly enough. No. His eyes looked terrified once more. You don't understand. I can't control myself. Yes, that was the point. I might hurt someone. Again, that was the point. Itachi had to be made to pay for what he did. Suki didn't care how that came about exactly. All that she knew was that she wanted to watch the light leave his eyes as the truth finally dawned on him. That he was powerless before her. That he couldn't stop his impending death. Just as she hadn't been able to save their family. It was at that moment that she could have her revenge and Suki could have her life back. Everything else was an afterthought. Except for Naruto. I'll keep you from hurting anyone innocent. Though he had always been an exception. She still didn't know why she had been foolish enough to kiss him. Why she had taunted him like that. It had worked, but she wasn't sure who had fallen for it more, and that was so damn frustrating. Did she actually have feelings for him? Perhaps, it was simply a case of her clinging to one of the few constants in her life. Suki had given up almost everything when she left the Leaf, but Naruto wouldn't let her give him up. How do you know that, and who are you? He tilts his head in confusion. Suki smirks at that question. I'm Suki Uchiha. Her smirk grows wider. And I'm the one who killed Orochimaru. With that being said, she activates her Sharingan as if to illustrate her point. Perhaps, now they would get somewhere. Dealing with Jugo would likely prove far easier than dealing with Naruto. Though she tries desperately to push that thought to the side. Not now. He was always doing that. Barging in on her thoughts. If she didn't know better, Suki would accuse him of being the one who had cast genjutsu, but she did. You're Suki. He blinks at her. You were the one who was going to be Lord Orochimaru's next vessel. Bingo. They were getting somewhere. Suki nods as she steals the key to his cell from Karen. That's right. She opens the door. I'm Suki Uchiha, and you're going to help us kill Itachi. In exchange for that, I'll make sure that you never hurt anyone ever again. She smirks once more. Well, at least not anyone who doesn't deserve it. She really is such a bossy princess. Suigetsu rolls his eyes. Though she probably means that. Besides, it's better than being stuck in a cell all day, and anyone who you kill, kinda deserves it. He shrugs. This isn't a world where weakling thrive. That was apparently the wrong thing to say. Suddenly, Jugo transformed from a gentle, skittish giant into a bloodthirsty killer. A killer who was coming at Suigetsu with an axe made out of charik. Suigetsu. Karen's scream pierced through the entire prison. Though Suki moved quickly, stepping between the two of them with some snakes and a Chidori blocking them. Stop it. And just like that, Jugo did indeed stop it. Since you were going to be Lord Orochimaru's next vessel, that means you're the living embodiment of Kimamaro's will. Suki knew that was the name of the man who would have been the Sanin's vessel, had he not died from an illness. So I will be your shield. Right then. Suki shakes her head. She would never understand what really went on in the heads of some ninjas, but the Uchiha woman wasn't going to argue at the complete 180. Wait. Suigetsu flails. That's it. She flashes you her eyes and says that Orochimaru wanted her body and now, you're gonna do whatever she wants. Apparently, Suigetsu was going to ask though. He was annoying. Still, his skills with a sword and his water abilities made him too useful to kill at the moment, and one day, he'd bet he best match against someone like Kisame. Kisame was Itachi's Akatsuki partner. It was more likely than not that when Suki finally found him, he wouldn't be alone. Hence, when she had carefully selected this team. Well, yes. Jugo nods as if it was the most natural thing in the world. Suki rolls her eyes at Suigetsu. Karen, set the cells to be open 24 hours from now. That would give them enough time to be far enough away from the prison that it wouldn't matter. I'm not leaving them to die. Some of them were ruthless criminals, but she also suspected that some were just kidnapped victims. Of course, she didn't know that for a fact, but if she left them to die, she'd be just as bad as Itachi. Hell, she might even be worse. Itachi had presumably killed their family quickly. He hadn't left them to starve to death. You sure about that? Karen tilts her head at the command. Suki nods. She was sure. It was the right thing to do in one final slight at Orochimaru. So she was going to do it. You're nuts. Suigetsu shakes his head. Do you have any idea how crazy these fuckers are? There's a reason why even Orochimaru's creepy ass didn't want them wandering around. To which the raven-haired Uchiha raises an eyebrow. By that logic, I should have left you in the tank. Which, to be fair, might have been the smarter thing to do. If you have a problem with my orders, you can fight me for leadership or leave, but you won't find your precious swords as easily without me. Well, that shuts Suigetsu up, and Karen sets the prison cells to automatically open 24 hours after they left. Once those two goals had been accomplished, Suki leaves with her new team. Her team that would help her kill Itachi, and just maybe, after that she would finally figure out what she was going to do about a certain bubbly blonde that didn't know when to give up. It had been weeks since Itachi had last had a good lead on where his foolish little sister was. Though he wasn't the only one feeling the frustration of her stealth. Apparently, so was a certain blonde. Suki. A voice echoed throughout the forest desperately. He must have seen Itachi's Sharingan and not realized who it belonged to. It was an easy mistake to make, Itachi mused to himself. There were only a handful of Sharingan users in the world, and Naruto only knew about 3. When the Jinchuriki skidded to a halt, he quickly realized his mistake. You're not Suki. My, he was quite the perceptive one. Itachi almost laughed at the thought. No, he smirked at Naruto. I am not my foolish little sister. Well, now that the other ninja was here, the elder Uchiha sibling decided to get some answers. Those eyes were startled as he stared at Itachi in shock. Probably because, like most of the world, he saw Itachi as nothing more than a clan slayer. He could only surmise that his appearance had indeed surprised the other man greatly. You're Itachi. Accurate. Though he still had questions that he wanted answered. I am, but tell me something. Why are you so obsessed with her? Because obviously the Jinchuriki clearly was. Because she's my friend. Naruto's words came out as a hiss. My teammate and a ninja of the Hidden Leaf Village. Venomous as any snake's bite. Oh dear. The Jinchuriki really was in love with his sister. Itachi idly wondered if Naruto was even aware of that fact yet. Oh well, if nothing else, it would pass the time, and there was a slight chance he might have learned something useful by asking. Perhaps, but it's rather obvious that my sister wants nothing to do with you, or else she would be in the Leaf Village. It was a low blow, but Itachi had to play his part. His role as the villain, and in some ways, it was ridiculously easy. People were always so eager to believe the simplest explanation that was presented before them. Don't you ever call her that again. Naruto's teeth were elongating. I'm more of a brother to her than you ever were. Itachi merely shook his head. You're not threat to me. Naruto couldn't even see what was in front of his face. You're too blind to see your own truth. So why should your punches be more accurate than your perception? That was enough to set Naruto off. He charged at Itachi, but he just flickered off. Unfortunately for his sister's pet fox, he didn't have time to play today. Sorry, Itachi. Kisame shrugs as they continue their search. I don't see how it matters. It's not like she's going to invite you to her wedding anyway. It was the principle of the thing, really. If he survives, I just want to ensure that he's worthy of her. That was all. For a moment, his partner gives him a rather skeptical look. Shouldn't you have worried about stuff like that before the massacre? It seemed that Kisame wanted to feel his wrath today. Very well. If you like, we can discuss this matter more in depth inside my genjutsu. Itachi activates his Sharingan as if to illustrate his point. Wisely, Kisame decides to stay silent after that. Good. Now, they could focus on more important things. Like finding his foolish little sister and her even more foolish fox. Meanwhile, Suki was resting in an inn with her team. Well, more specifically, she was in the baths with Karen. Because there was no way in hell she was bathing with Suigetsu, and poor Jugo really was serving as her shield at the moment. It's nice that Jugo is keeping that pervert out. Karen sighs in contentment as they enjoy the warm bath. Yes, it was nice. Suki wasn't entirely sure that Suigetsu would care all that much about a display of nudity, especially since towels were wrapped around them. Though she suspected he would peep just to annoy them, if he could. Therefore, Jugo was serving an essential role at the moment. She still didn't know what she was going to do about Naruto, but she knew one thing. This was getting out of hand. The genjutsu was supposed to distract him. Not the other way around. She had never thought about using seduction on Naruto before, but maybe Suki should have. It was a valuable tool in any female ninja's arsenal, and to some degree, in any male ninja's arsenal. The idea of doing so had always just left a bitter taste in her mouth. Yes, it is nice of him. It wasn't that way with Naruto though, but Suki knew that she needed to pay more attention to her female teammate. If her mind wandered too much, Karen was going to notice. And if that happened, Suki really didn't feel like explaining the reason for her lack of attentiveness. It was just his words kept ringing in her ears over and over again. Because you're my friend. Really. Friends didn't kiss friends like that, even in genjutsus. They were clearly more than friends, but less than lovers. Who would have thought the guy who was known for flying into rages would be the most chivalrous of the bunch? Karen laughs, momentarily distracting Suki from her thoughts. That was true. She had quite the interesting team to say the least. Suigetsu, who was a mischievous killer, Karen, who was well almost normal by sound standards, and then there was Jugo. The protector. Her shield. A role which usually went to Naruto. That or she shielded him. At least, that was how it usually went when they weren't fighting. Had Sai taken her place in that respect? It was annoying to think about. Life can be strange sometimes. Suki nods in agreement at Karen's assessment. She was the one who had helped Naruto with Haku. Suki was the one who had almost died to save him, and now, Sai was the one who had saved the blonde from her. It was wrong on so many levels. Of course, Suki had smacked the other ninja around a lot. That was mostly for training though, and because sometimes he needed it. She had never intended to kill him before going to the sound though. It was disturbing really. So where are we going next? Suki couldn't kill him, and when she had been about to die, Naruto had been the one she thought the most about. Not Itachi. Not her deceased family. Suki. Just Naruto. Suki. Oh. The raven-haired woman rubs her ears. Karen, you don't need to scream at me like that to get my attention. The redhead gives her a strange look. Well, you were spacing out pretty hardcore on me. Damn it. This was all his fault. She never should have kissed him. Why had she done that? Everything had been going so well before that. Now she was questioning everything. Maybe, it would have been okay to do this after Itachi was dead. Maybe, then she could have just gone back to the leaf and everything would have been normal again. Naruto might even drag her on dates to the ramen shop and she would indulge him. Mostly because he was obsessed with the stuff and they did serve some rather good tomato salads. Sorry. Suki sighs as she casts an apologetic look at her teammate. She could just imagine her teammates' reactions. Sai would likely quit Team 7 and be reassigned elsewhere as was proper. Sakura would probably just stare at them and maybe get really loud about the whole thing. And knowing Kakashi, he would tease them without mercy and probably offer to give them a copy of one his perverted books. They were almost old enough to legally read them now. Really, that 18 restriction was pointless for ninjas. By that age it was almost certain that a ninja had already killed someone and yet, they weren't allowed to read naughty books legally. Give her a break, Suki thinks to herself as she rolls her eyes. This was apparently to Karen's displeasure. Hey, she must have done something wrong during her daydream. Why are you rolling your eyes at me? Ah, so that was it. Well, this was annoying. Now, Suki had to come up with a suitable excuse to explain away her behavior. Just a stray thought I had. Suki shakes her head, waving off Karen's irritation. It wasn't directed towards you. To someone like Suki, that should be the end of the conversation. Though apparently, she didn't understand how things worked with other girls her own age. Really, other than the academy, Sakura was the only girl that she had hung out with for extended periods of times and Suki had largely ignored her when possible. So perhaps, it was to be expected that the last female Uchiha wasn't up to date on girl talk rules. Really, what was it? Karen was kidding her, right? Fine. Suki was apparently going to have to offer her something or else the other woman would never let it go. It's about the restrictions on books featuring intimacy. So she'd give her the necessary fig leaf. The age restrictions. It's ridiculous that they apply to ninjas. Oh right. Karen nods at that. You have a point. It's really weird. That was true. So does this mean you have a thing for naughty books? That question causes Suki to flail. Honestly, how did she get herself into these situations? Now, her only female teammate probably thought she was some kind of pervert. What? No. Damn it. Could never ever go her way. At that same moment, Naruto was being cheered. Unfortunately, he couldn't really be truly happy about that. The high of being praised as a hero was rapidly wearing off and the reality of the situation was sinking in. Jiraiya was dead and most of the village's buildings had been destroyed. Not only that, but Danzo was now acting as temporary Hokage until they could vote on who would step in for Tsunade until she was better. Naruto refused to think that there was any other possibility than Granny Tsunade making a full recovery and then there was one more thing that he had to deal with. Danzo had Raven-Furred classified as a missing nin. There was that. The old bastard's first order had been to classify Suki as a missing nin immediately after Pain's attack was over. It was infuriating because Naruto knew exactly what that meant. This was no longer about retrieving Suki and bringing her back. Now, Leaf ninjas would actively be trying to kill her and it was all because of Danzo. So this is what she feels like towards Itachi. This feeling that was burning inside him, well, it explained everything. Naruto wasn't the type of person who hated others easily. There were only a few people that really feel into that camp. Orochimaru for taking Suki, Itachi for what he had done to her and the rest of the Uchiha clan. Briefly Pain for what had happened to Jiraiya and now, there was Danzo. Danzo who had just put a lethal target on his best friend's back. That bastard. He might be worse than Orochimaru in some ways. Naruto didn't really get involved in politics, but he could see what was going on. Danzo didn't want to be a temporary Hokage. He wanted to be the permanent Hokage and being responsible for Suki's death, well, that would curry him favor with far more people than the blonde really wanted to admit to. Exactly. Careful. Hatred is a poison, one that it sounded like the Nine Tails had a lot of experience with. From what Kurama had told him, he was furious with his previous vessels for treating him poorly. Not even his own mother had seemed to fully grasp that the tailed beasts were their own people, in a way. They had feelings and desires just like anyone else. Naruto sighs as he looks at the ruins. Yeah, I know. They could always rebuild again. It was replacing people that couldn't be done. A few days later, Suki had heard of the attack and she found despite her best efforts that she couldn't stay away. Are you crazy? Suigetsu gives her a look from their position in the forest of death. You're a missing nin now. Maybe. He was right. Maybe. She really was crazy. That didn't change the fact that she had to come and see for herself. It seemed the rumors of the leaf's destruction hadn't been exaggerated. Though it was only a physical destruction. Shut up. She gives him a dirty look. Do you want us to get caught? Which thankfully was enough to silence him. It seemed like the casualty toll had been startlingly low. Of course, she didn't realize that many of them had been revived. Naruto must have been there when the attack struck or gotten there in time, she muses. The only thing that she could really see competing with an assault of this magnitude was the power of the nine-tailed fox and Naruto's sheer stubbornness. That thought brought a smile to her face, even though it shouldn't have. Naruto would always be Naruto, and that brought her a degree of comfort that was alarming. Suki, we should go. Jugo's voice was like an anchor. We will soon. She glances at them. Just stay in the forest, keeping transformation jutsu disguises on, and mask your chakra as much as possible. And with that, she sneakily makes her way towards the Uchiha district. It was the only place in the village, she noticed, that didn't have people either being treated for injuries or helping with reconstruction. That thought made her feel irritated, but she shoots it down. Why would they focus on patching up an empty district first? Doing so wouldn't have made any logical sense. He'll come soon. She smiles at that thought. I know it. Naruto was far from a sensory type, but they had always been able to feel each other out for some reason. Now, she had an idea of why that was exactly, and well, Suki almost wished that she didn't. Well, that's quite interesting. Kana smirks at Kabuto. It seems the leaf has been leveled. The silver-haired man raises an eyebrow in response. We've confirmed the rumors then. That was almost too easy. She nods at him. That was good. The leaf had either been destroyed or knocked down more than enough that they'd be able to continue their experiments in relative peace. Orochimaru's life's work would be brought to fruition. It has been leveled. She sighs softly and shakes her head. Though from I've heard, Naruto managed to defeat Pain. What? He knew that the blonde possessed the nine-tailed fox, but Kabuto never would have imagined him capable of such a feat. It almost seemed like the stuff of fantasy. Well, that is interesting news. Very much so. The gray-haired woman nods at him. What are your orders? It was so nice to have a reliable second-in-command such as Kana. She might not be the strongest in the sound, but she was a powerful ninja in her own right, and she was very clever. Not to mention loyal. They worked well together. It was really no wonder why Orochimaru had favored the woman so much. She was a valuable asset. We shall continue as we have been. He glances at Kana, who nods in agreement. Back in the leaf, Naruto's eyes widen for a moment before he quickly makes an excuse to leave the construction group he was worried on. I'll be back later. I promised Sakura that I would help her at the hospital. He grins at them before darting off in that general direction. That was definitely her chakra, but it was faint. Kurama was right about that. Yeah, it definitely was. Was she hurt or just trying to be sneaky? Naruto wasn't sure, but he knew one thing. He was definitely going to find her. He had to before Danzo or one of the other leaf ninjas did, or she might be dead. It's coming from her district. With that thought in mind, Naruto heads there as quickly as he could. Sadly, that wasn't nearly as quickly as he would have liked. Friend, Naruto, it was Lee. You here to help us? Damn it. Now was definitely not the time. This had to be like the fourth group of friends that he had run into. Naruto would have been more than happy to lend a hand, any other time. He had to get to Suki though. Sorry, Lee. He grins at him. I promised Sakura that I'd help her at the hospital. He smiles again. So I'll see you later. It wasn't a complete lie, he had promised. Though that was now an afterthought as the blonde proceeds to the Uchiha district. By the time he got there, Naruto was wondering if maybe he'd been too late. That was until he saw something black out of the corner of his eye. Definitely, Suki then. He rushes over to her and pins her to one of the trees that hadn't been leveled. Any other time, I would be thrilled to see you. Yeah, that scent was definitely Suki and he could definitely feel her squirming against him now in the manner that only his best friend could. Are you crazy though? Danzo has declared you as a missing nin. I know that. He'd gotten a stronger since they were genin, Suki idly notes. There was a time when she could have gotten out of this hold far easier. Those days were gone now. Naruto had the edge when it came to raw strength now, but she was still faster. That was something. Then what are you doing here? His voice sounded so hopeful that it almost made Suki wince. She sighs as she tilts her head back just enough to look him in the eye. I had to see you. I heard about Jiraiya and the attack. And as much as it killed her to admit it even to herself, she cared that he was likely devastated. Suki felt at the moment that Naruto's hold loosened and she wiggles out of it. You pick now of all times to go back to normal. His voice wasn't hopeful now, it was well accusing. Suki didn't care for it because it was his fault she felt this way. Logic be damned. It didn't matter that she had been the one to leave. That she had been the one to perform genjutsu on him and that she had been the one stupid enough to kiss him. No. This was all Naruto's fault. Thank you very much. I'm not here to stay, if that's what you're thinking. Some part of her knew that she was being irrational, but the larger part of her didn't care. She was tired of this. Suki was tired of the fact that Itachi was still dead. She was tired of hurting Naruto and damn it, she was tired of the leaf being fucking stupid. Naruto's eyes narrow at that and that's when she notices something that probably wasn't a good sign. The blonde's eyes were no longer sapphire blue, they were red. Blood red. Damn it. It probably had something to do with Kyuubi. That's it. She feels herself swallow thickly for a moment. She could dispel the fox inside Naruto's head easily enough, but she didn't really know what that would do when Naruto was in this strange state. A state where he was apparently unconsciously channeling the Nine Tails energy in his anger. I'm not sure how, but I'm going to find a way deal with Danzo. And you are staying and we'll deal with Itachi, together. Suki was about to tell Naruto just how foolish he was being when he does something unexpected. He grabs her and spanks her. You know, Kurama had a point about this. More than once. You can't just keep running off like that and then toying with me with your weird mind games. It didn't hurt, but it was firm enough that she was sure her backside was going to be a rosy pink from the strikes. Unbelievable. She couldn't believe it. Naruto held her firmly around the waist with one hand and his other hand was currently on the third swat. The fox demon told you to spank me. Great. The furball was a pervert. She'd have to deal with that later. For now, she really had to get out of there. Naruto was right. It was dangerous. Well yeah, Naruto stopped striking her backside, but he still had his arm around her. You deserve it after everything. Alright, maybe, that was fair. She had hurt him a lot. Suki hadn't intentionally sought to do so, but did he have to punish her with of all things, a spanking? She was about to tell him as much when she senses several chakra signatures approaching. Suki, you have to go. Naruto releases her from his gripe in a panic. You're a missing nin now. If they find you, they will try to kill you. Alright, she could have handicapped them. Suki knew that with absolute certainty, but she didn't want Naruto to get caught up in the middle of that fight. There's just one thing that I want you to know before I go. Forcing him to defend her, his firmer teammate, or to fight for his village. She couldn't make him choose. Shadow clone jutsu. He forms several clones and they each spread out. What is it? Naruto was stalling for time. She knew exactly what he was doing. He was trying to make it seem like he had either been investigating the chakra signature in the district or was responsible for it because he was using clones for reconstruction. It was clever. I lied to you. She brushes her lips against his. It wasn't a whim. I couldn't kill you because I love you. Naruto's eyes widen as he caresses her cheek. I love you too. She smiles at that. But you have to go now or you'll get caught. I can buy you a few minutes, but that's it. That's all I need. With that being said, Suki flickers off unaware that they were being watched. Not by leaf ninjas, but by someone else. Well, that certainly makes things interesting. Suki was in love with a Jinchuriki. This wasn't something that he could have foreseen, but it actually fit rather perfectly into his plans. Running. She was running. Possibly faster than she ever had in her life. Suki Uchiha could not afford to be caught, and if she flickered, there was a chance that one of the Leafs Anbus would sense her chakra. She had actually said it out loud. Suki had told Naruto the truth that she had been denying even to herself for so long. That she loved him. There was a certain liberation that came with her confession, but one she couldn't celebrate properly at the moment. I love you too. Naruto had said it back. Everything would have been perfect, if it wasn't for Itachi and Danzo. Her brother who had butchered their clan to test his own power and the man who had now marked her as a missing nin. And by doing so, the temporary Hokage had put a target on her back. Temporary. That's what he was, she thinks to herself as she urges her legs to carry her faster. Faster and faster. Deeper and deeper into the forest of death. Which strangely enough now held her best chance of survival. She would call out for her teammates, but that wouldn't do. The Anbu might hear here. So she would just have to keep running until she reached the spot where she left them and hope like hell that they hadn't left it. Naruto had bought her a few minutes, and those minutes were each precious. Each one could literally mean the difference between life and death. Whether that was her own death or someone else's. So focused on her thoughts of escape was she, that she almost ran straight into a nearby tree, but she narrowly dodges it at the last moment. Damn it! Disturbing a hive of bees, that she promptly ignores. She was running too fast for them to be an issue, and if Suki was lucky, they might still be wound up by the time the Anbu got that far. Holy fuck! Suki, what the hell is going on? Suigetsu. It was Suigetsu. She immediately looks around for her teammate and sighs in relief when she actually finds him. We need to run now. There was no need to waste time on words. Time was of the essence. Alright. Karen walks out from behind the tree. Where are we going? That was a good question. Suki didn't really know. Away from here. That was the only answer she could give. On the plus side, if they didn't know where they were going, it would be very hard for the Anbu to predict their movements. On the not so plus side, it would also slow them down as they made decisions. I'll send some animals to distract them. Jugo nods at Suki as the three of them take off as one. She didn't really know how much time birds and other common wildlife would buy them, but Suki would take what she could get. The last female Uchiha wasn't going to put Naruto in that position. The position of choosing between his love for her and his love for his village. A few hours later, Naruto was called into the Hokage's office. He knew enough about Danzo to realize that was bad news, but he was also angry enough that he didn't care. I've received reports that you were in the Uchiha district. Of course, he had. Naruto was far from a politician, but he knew that Danzo was likely watching that place like a hawk. It was only natural that he would want Suki to be captured on his watch, but it all felt more personal than that to him for some reason. Danzo had a grudge against Suki, and the blonde wanted to know why. There had to be a reason why he had changed her status as soon as he became Hokage. It was almost like he had planned this. Naruto nods. There was really no point in denying that. He'd been seen by several Anbus. I am curious as to the reason why. Danzo's eyes narrow as he gazes at the sapphire-eyed ninja in what Naruto could only describe as a very calculating way. There was no warmth in those eyes. It was utterly predatory. Danzo's eyes didn't hold the same madness as Orochimaru's, but he was just as much of a threat. Perhaps even more so than the snake had been. Orochimaru had been a criminal ninja. The leaf had banished him. The same couldn't be said for this elderly man who was sitting across from Naruto now. The man who had ordered Suki's death. Naruto does his best to shrug casually. The entire village was leveled in Pain's attack. He wasn't sure if Danzo would buy it, but it was worth a shot. So I was working on reconstruction. You were working on reconstructing the Uchiha district. Danzo raises an eyebrow. Why? Suki is a missing nin now. Damn it. The old bastard wasn't buying it. She's going to be executed on sight, and as there are no other Uchihas who aren't criminals, you're reconstructing empty houses. Hold your temper for now. That was easier said than done. This jerk had discussed Suki's death so casually in front of him that it was making Naruto's blood boil. His teeth were elongating and he could see his eyes were bleeding red. It was something of a miracle that Kurama's chakra wasn't leaking out of him yet. He had to keep calm down. I have faith that she's going to be cleared of her missing nin status. For Suki, she was likely running for her life now. If he could keep Danzo tied up, that could only help her. Which meant he couldn't afford to tear into the old man. I'm not sure why you would believe that. Danzo glares at him coolly. She abandoned her village and joined the Sound. That was technically true, but that didn't matter to Naruto. There are even rumors floating about that she may have killed Orochimaru. She was still Suki, and those rumors weren't rumors. The other ninja had played with his mind, but that was only to hide. She didn't want to be found yet. That was a far cry from being an enemy of the Leaf Village. Because I know that Granny Tsunade is going to get better. He clutches his fist so tightly that Naruto could feel his fingernails cut into the skin. You're only temporary Hokage, and she's going to undo Suki's status as a missing nin. He'd control his temper to a degree, but this man wasn't worthy of sitting in the Hokage office. He was nothing like the Hokages who came before him. Danzo was nothing more than an imposter who had finally been at the right place at the right time. Well, at least from Danzo's perspective. His eyes. They were full of hatred now. Yes, I do wish Lady Tsunade a speedy recovery. Naruto doubted that. Be that as it may, I'm quite certain she won't rescind my order in any case. This creep didn't give a damn about Granny Tsunade. We'll see. Naruto bites his tongue so hard that it hurt. He wanted to scream at Danzo. Naruto wanted to Rasengan him, but the blonde wasn't stupid. If he did that, he'd be declared a criminal ninja, and that was assuming he escaped in the first place. Danzo nods as he taps his fingers on the desk as though considering something. I suppose you do have a point though. He did. That is a lot of land that isn't being utilized. We should have reconstruction efforts there, and later we can sell the land to whoever is interested. What? This bastard wanted to sell Suki's home. Her clan's district. There was no way that he was ever going to allow such a thing. Over his dead body. You'll never get a chance to make any money off it. Naruto was seething now. Tsunade will be better long before you can sell even 1 acre. Danzo just smirks at him as he waves his hand. You're dismissed. Naruto had never wanted to punch someone's face so badly before. Well, other than Orochimaru. This man was evil. He'd always tried to see the good in people, but every once in a while there were a few people who just could not be saved. Naruto might not know a lot about politics, but he could tell when someone had been corrupted by power, and Danzo fit had bill. Yes, Lord Temporary. Naruto gives a mock bow and flickers off before Danzo could scold him for his lack of respect. She was a fast one. Obito had to give his relative that much. Suki Uchiha was fast, and so was her team. Though the Hazuka wanted to stop for water breaks, they still traveled at breakneck speed. The group had ignored his requests. Suigetsu had to content himself with whatever water they had on hand. It looks like they're finally going to rest for the night. Good. Now, it was almost the perfect time to strike. He didn't sense Itachi anywhere nearby. Perhaps, it was time to have a chat with his only living female relative. She had certainly grown since the massacre, and soon, she would be able to put her newfound strength to good use. We should be safe here. Suki's eyes were scanning around them on full alert. We've made it out of the Fire Nation. That was true. Their speed had truly astonished him. They had covered in one night the distance it would usually take two to do. Which meant, Taka, as they called themselves, must truly be exhausted. Finally, Suigetsu sighs in relief as fills his canteen in the stream. Suki rolls her eyes at that. Would you rather have stopped before and had to fight the leaf Sanbu? That was a practical point, Obito chuckles quietly to himself. Her teammate was less than thrilled by her retort. It was understandable really. It seemed that Suki's sentimentality had put them all in harm's way. She was willing to put herself in danger, if it meant comforting that blonde. That was very, very good to know and delightfully exploitable. I would have preferred we not go off into the hidden leaf village so you could see your boyfriend. Suigetsu glares at her. I thought that he broke up with you anyway. That was the wrong thing to say. Obito shakes his head as he watches the entire spectacle that unfolded in amusement. Now, the red-headed girl was interested about Suki's boyfriend, and Suigetsu was likely in for a beating. Just shut up. And here it comes. Chidori. Yes, there it was. Kakashi's trademark attack. He must have passed it on to his student. It was ironic. Idly, he wonders if somehow he could get Suki to attack her former sensei with it. It would be quite the delightful irony. Please, stop fighting. Though it appeared that the giant was the peacemaking. We should get some rest. It's not going to be easy to completely shake them off. He stores the tidbit of information away for a later date. One never knew when such knowledge would come in handy. Karen nods at that. Jugo is right. The girl turns her attention back to Suki. Who is your boyfriend? Is that why you were so upset about the age restrictions for erotic novels? He almost felt sorry for his clanswoman really. The woman must have been utterly humiliated judging by how red her cheeks were turning. No. She glares daggers at her female teammate. Well, she was in love and curious about erotic reading material. Assuming that she didn't get killed beforehand, it looked like their clan was in good hands. Now, he just had to make sure that the new world was built for them and for everyone else. Itachi sighs as he takes more medication. Orochimaru was dead, that much he had confirmed. So naturally, his foolish little sister was on the move. You know, for a smart guy you can be pretty stupid sometimes. That and Kisame was being irritating. He was half certain that the other man was trying to talk him out of his plan. That wasn't going to happen, but he did appreciate on some level the other ninja cared enough to try to save him. Unfortunately, he'd chosen his path long ago and he wasn't going to deviate from it. He'd made his peace with it. Itachi just had to ensure that everything he had been working on actually came to pass. Debatable. That was really all he was going to say on the matter. Though we need to find out where she went. He had been looking for her for weeks and no sign of Suki. It was most perplexing to say the least. Where could she be looking for him? You know, she might have gone to see her boy toy. What? Could she really be that foolish? Didn't Suki realize that Danzo was Hokage and that he had declared her a missing nin? If she went to the Leaf Village to see Naruto, she might very well be marching towards her own death. Never mind. She would be that foolish. There was a reason why he called her his foolish little sister after all. Suki's heart did rule her for better or for worse. He sighs at Kisame. You may be right. That meant they were heading to the Leaf Village. If we press on, if we hurry we can be there as early as tomorrow night. They had to hurry, lest Danzo see her. The man had broken his word. He had promised she would be safe. At the moment, Itachi Uchiha wouldn't put anything past him and that was why he was practically flying next to Kisame as they raced towards the hidden leaf. Several hours later, Suki was asleep when she hears something. Someone was trying to sneak up on her. So she shoots up out of her sleeping bag and has a kunai ready to defend herself in the time it would take most people to blink their eye. Your reflexes are impressive. The person sounded far too amused for liking. As expected of Itachi's little sister though. And this man knew Itachi. She slams herself into him, pinning him against the tree. Only to discover a log stood in the place where the man had been. A substitution jutsu. Suki hadn't seen that one in a while. You picked the wrong group to ambush. Suki smirks. I'm not alone. The man behind the orange mask chuckles. Oh, I'm fully aware of that. He smiles at her. Well, at least Suki assumed he was smiling behind his mask. They're unconscious now. That's when she noticed only one of his eyes was visible and it was apple red. It was also a Sharingan. Suki couldn't help but gape at that discovery. Was it really, or was it a trick though? Perhaps it had been a transplant like Kakashi's. She had always wondered why had only had one Sharingan. Could this man be the reason why he didn't have a matching set? What did you do to them? She wasn't sure whether she wanted to attack him or not. There was a chance that this man was actually her family. Had someone escaped the massacre with their life intact? Had Itachi missed someone? He smirks at her. I merely used a genjutsu on them. She didn't like the look of that smirk though. As I'm sure you're well aware, the Sharingan does have a marvelous way of amplifying the impact of genjutsu. This man had used his Sharingan to knock her teammates out. That meant he was not to be underestimated, and assuming he was telling the truth, he wasn't necessarily here to fight either. It would have made more sense to kill her in her sleep, or at least to have tried to do so. That mean the wanted something. Something very important, if he was willing to risk taking them all on at once. I'm aware of that. Suki's eyes narrow. What I'm not aware of is what you want. If he had been alive all this time and was an Uchiha, why hadn't he found her before? Where was he when she was a child? Surely, he must have found out at some point she survived. Was he afraid of Itachi coming back to the leaf and targeting any potential survivors? Was that why he had stayed away? I want to do something for you that I don't believe anyone else has yet. He chuckles. Well, besides your lover. Suki feels her face burn at that. He's not my lover. Not yet. Though it was no mystery who the man was referring to. He knew about Naruto. Suki wasn't sure how, but this man knew about her favorite blonde. Somehow, she doubted that was a good thing. Ah, I see. He nods. Well, I suppose that's just as well. You're both on the young side. She did not need to be lectured about such things by a stranger. I'll ask nicely one more time. After that, she was going to lose her patience. What do you want? To tell you the truth. Obito smiles at her. Itachi did kill our clan. That's true, but not for the reasons you think. He was ordered to do it by the hidden leaf. Suki's eyes narrow at that. It couldn't possibly be true. Her village would never sanction a genocide like this man was suggesting. Why would they? The Uchihas had been one of their most powerful clans and managed the military police force. They were quite simply too valuable to kill. Why would the leaf do such a thing? Not only that, but why would Itachi go along with it? The Uchihas were always a powerful clan. There were those who feared us taking over the leaf from the beginning. The second Hokage in particular. He pauses. I'm not entirely certain what his original intentions were, but he gave us our own district. Put us in charge of the military police force. The man was choosing his words very carefully. Isolated us. Being in charge of the military police force had been an honor though, and so was having their own district. Suki for the life of her couldn't understand how that was connected to the massacre. Get to the point. She grits her teeth. Her entire world was spinning. Could it really be true? Had Itachi butchered every single member of their clan save for them and this mysterious man on the orders of the leaf? He nods at her. Well, isolation made us something of an unknown to the rest of the villagers. People fear what they do not know. That was true. Fear can too easily turn into hatred, and once hatred forms, well, it was only a matter of time before they struck. His words felt disturbingly plausible. This masked man was painting a picture for Suki that she did not like in the slightest. And, still, she needed to know the truth. Whatever it was, Suki Uchiha had to know. Had Itachi killed their kin of his own violation or not, and if he hadn't, What was she supposed to do with this new information? They were discriminated against and our clan knew we were feared. It's only natural that they would strike back. He shakes his head. They were plotting a coup and it was their intention to install Fugaku as the new Hokage. Her father is the Hokage. You're lying. She seethes at him. This couldn't possibly be true. Her clan had been planning a coup and the Leaf had ordered the deaths of her family. Itachi had been a victim of circumstances beyond his control. He sighs and looks almost a bit wishful. I'm not. Though Itachi knew what would happen. Even if the Uchihas succeeded, the village would have been greatly weakened and other ninja villages would have tried to take advantage of that fact. A war. It would have sparked a war. Itachi had to choose between his clan or preventing another ninja war. Her voice was barely more than a whisper now. Could it really be true? She didn't know. It seemed far too elaborate for the man to have just made up, and what would he stand to gain from doing so? It was possible this was all a lie, but it all felt true. Disturbingly true. Precisely. He glances at her. I understand this is a lot to take in you and have no reason to trust me, but you can always ask Danzo. Obito smirks at him. If you don't believe me, ask him. He's the one who put Itachi up to it. All of this begged one important question though. How did this masked man know about any of this? Her eyes narrow once more at that thought. And how did you come by all this information? There was more to this story that he wasn't telling. There had to be. I was the one who helped Itachi slay our clan. What? He was powerful, but not invincible. He looks at her with something that was halfway between an apologetic gaze and a smirk. Though we'll discuss this more later. It seems that your Jinchuriki is coming. And before Suki could say anything else, he flickers out of view. Damn it. She slams her fist into the tree. Wait. He had said Naruto was coming. Was that really the case? Suddenly, she scans the area and tries to sense Naruto's chakra. It was faint, but it was coming towards her. He must have tracked her somehow. Naruto was coming. She bites her lower lip at that thought. Should she tell him what she'd heard? Maybe. Suki should try to outrun him and get back to the Leaf. It was now clear that she had to speak with Danzo. If any of this was true, everything that she and Naruto had ever believed about that village was a lie. The village that Naruto wanted to lead, it had committed genocide. Naruto. What was she going to do about him? She loved him and Suki didn't want to force him to choose between the Leaf and her, but if what the other man had said was true, there was no way that she could allow that to stand. She still had to avenge her clan. Whether that was against Itachi or the Leaf, it didn't matter. Would Naruto feel the same way though? He wouldn't tolerate it either, but he also wouldn't want to fight against the village he loved. The blonde loved her too though. First, I've got to find out if it's true or not. This might all mean nothing, if the mysterious third Uchiha was lying. Then I'll decide what to do. She nods her head just as she saw some blonde hair in the distance. He's here. It was time to put her genjutsu to good use and distract Naruto while she found out the truth. Naruto knew that it was a risk, but he had to know that she was okay. That and they had just said they loved each other. He couldn't just let her run off. Again. Okay. I just have to focus on her chakra. Calling out for her was out of the question. That was just as likely to alert the ANBUS searching for her as it was to help him find her. No. He'd have to do this the old-fashioned way. Tracking her chakra and having Kurama send her out. He had been running for what seemed like forever when he finally felt it. Suki's chakra. It was faint, but growing stronger. The fact that he heard a tree fall nearby told Naruto all he needed to know. Suki was close. Just a little bit further. That's when he feels something press up against his throat. A ninja should expect the unexpected. It was cold and metallic. A kunai. Naruto, don't lower your guard like that, especially with Danzo and the Anbu lurking around. Suki was holding a kunai against his neck. Yeah, I'll be sure to keep that in mind. The raven-haired ninja must have flickered behind him when he was searching for her. Are you hurt? Suki shakes her head as the blonde turns around to face her. I'm fine and so are the others. Right. The replacements. Naruto, you can't be here. She sighs as she lowers her kunai and caresses his cheek. For once in your life, do the smart thing instead of the brave one and go back. He wasn't sure if that was a compliment or an insult. Suki was definitely a master at giving backhanded compliments. Though that wasn't going to dissuade him. I'm not leaving you. Not this time. That creep is giddy about having you killed and he's planning to sell your district to the highest bidder. Suki's eyes flash ruby red at that. She was furious. Naruto knew it and she had every reason to be. Danzo was threatening her last worldly tie to her family besides Itachi. Her brother. The man who had killed them all. Once he was gone, the Uchiha district would be the only thing that she had left of her family besides her Sharingan. That was it. Suki twitches slightly, but otherwise she maintains a calm fury. I'll deal with him later. She looks at him, her eyes searching Naruto's for an answer to a question that she didn't even have the courtesy to voice. You're really not going to go back, are you? No. He shakes his head. Not until I know you're safe. Believe it. She actually smiles at him and kisses him. Well, that was different. Suki wasn't going to be stubborn about this. She must have really meant it when she said she loved him then. Not that Naruto thought that she was lying, but still it was nice not to fight for once. Alright. She takes his hand in her own. Come with me. I'll flicker us someplace safe and we can come up with a plan there. Yeah, that sounded good. So Naruto nods as Suki flickers them to a cave. He looks around in confusion. Well, it was as good a place as anywhere, he supposed. He smiles at her. So what's the plan? They were going to need something good to deal with Danzo. Just enjoy yourself. Suki pushes him onto the cave floor and straddles his hips. Let me take care of everything. His eyes widen at that. Naruto had read more than enough of Jiraiya's books to realize where this was going. As curious as he was about being with Suki in the most intimate way possible, Naruto was confused as hell. Now was really not the time. What was going on? Suki. I mean, I want to. The memory of her kiss was still burned into his memory with an almost breathtaking clarity. I really want to, but we have to deal with Danzo first, and I don't think that our first time should be in a cave. Don't you want somewhere more romantic? Suki shakes her head and kisses him. I just want to be us for a little while. She looks down at Naruto with ruby red eyes that were both loving and pleading. Just a few minutes. We just told each other that we loved each other, and because of Danzo and Itachi, we haven't gotten a chance to really be together. Don't let them take that from us. She was right. It was because of Itachi and Danzo that they were always fighting. That Suki had always run away from him. Maybe a few minutes wouldn't hurt. They had gotten fairly far away from the leaf and Kurama would warn them, if anyone was approaching. Alright. He caresses her cheek. Just a few more minutes. Soft. How was her skin this soft? Good. Suki smiles at him, and Naruto didn't even notice when she cast her genjutsu on him because she made it look exactly the same as the cave did. Itachi knew one thing. He had to get to the leaf as soon as possible. Kisame probably thought he was insane, but that didn't really matter. The other Akatsuki was indulging him. So how exactly are we going to just sneak up on the Hokage? Kisame raises an eyebrow. He's gotta have guards or something around his office. Doesn't he? That was a fair point. He does, and they're all skilled ninjas. None of them would be any match for him and Kisame though. Of that much, Itachi was quite certain. They pose no threat to you or me though. I have methods to deal with them. Kisame smirks and the elder Uchiha sibling shakes his head in amusement. Kisame was Kisame. It didn't really matter what the circumstances behind a battle were. The man just loved to fight. And no, I don't want to kill them unless it's absolutely necessary. It would be best to dispel any childish notions that were forming in the other Akatsuki's mind right now. If Kisame killed them, there was a higher chance that they could be tracked, and Itachi wouldn't allow that. Besides, what was the point of saving the Leaf Village, only to have his partner kill some of its ninjas? There was enough senseless death in the world. He wouldn't add more to it, if he could help it. The fact that Itachi had to slay his own family with his own two hands was bad enough. He didn't want to add to the ocean of blood that was already on his conscience. Kisame was right about one thing. They were both destined to die horrific deaths for what they had done to their comrades. It was just that Itachi's death was far more likely to happen in the immediate future than the former Mist Ninja's was. You never let me have any fun. Kisame sighs as though the thought of not murdering someone was terribly taxing. So what's the plan? And for someone like his partner, it probably was. Itachi smiles as he does a transformation jutsu. We need to get into the Hokage Tower without causing a scene. Taking the forms of two respected leaf ninjas was the perfect way to do that. You will transform yourself into Guy, and when we get there, we shall grab Danzo and take him elsewhere. Why do I have to be Guy? It was unexpected, but Kisame was actually complaining about his plan. Why can't I be Kakashi? I'm much better looking than that spandex wearing freak, and I don't have eyebrows that are fuzzy enough to strangle someone with. Eyebrows that were fuzzy enough to strangle somebody with. Honestly, where did Kisame get these amusing and ridiculous notions from? He didn't know whether to laugh or groan. Because Kakashi and I were on the same Anbu squad. That and Itachi was not wearing ugly green spandex. I know his mannerisms better than you do, so, and Guy's personality is very unique, but easy to mimic. Not when there was another alternative. There is no point in assuming their forms, if our behaviors are not convincing enough to fool the guards. Fine. Kisame rolls his eyes. You owe me big time for this though. His partner never failed to be amusing in some respect. Very well. The blue-skinned man could put it on his tab. Itachi doubted he'd live another year anyway. I'll owe you a favor. Now, let's go. With that in mind, the two of them slowly make their way towards the Hokage Tower. It wouldn't do to run. That would simply attract too much attention. Stealth is what this mission required, and so that was the tactic they were going to take. Whether Kisame liked it or not. Guy-sensei, a boy who looked disturbingly similar to Guy, runs over to them. You'll be so proud of me. I did 500 laps running around the village while walking on my hands. He was clearly just as insane as his father. Surely, Guy had to be this boy's father. That was the only logical explanation he could think of for why they looked so eerily similar in Itachi's mind. Itachi could only hope that Kisame could convince this person that he was actually the green beast of the hidden leaf. That's great. Kisame strikes a dramatic pose. That's the power of youth. Go and try to do 1,000 more, and that will be even more youthful. Hearts appear in the boy's eyes. Yes, Guy-sensei. Obviously, he had a severe case of hero worship for his instructor. I will do it. Watch me. And before another word was spoken, Lee jumps upside down and begins running off on his hands, using them as feet. You were right. Kisame blinks. It's disturbingly easy to pretend to be this guy. Itachi nods his head in agreement. Well, I'm glad that you've seen reason. He smiles as he pulls out a copy of one of Kakashi's favorite books. Now that you've practiced for your second career as an actor, let's keep going. Yeah. He raises an eyebrow. Hey, where'd you get the smut? Itachi shakes his head. That doesn't matter. All that mattered was getting to Danzo to resolve this issue of Suki being declared a missing nin, and besides, he was hardly the only ninja in the world who enjoyed reading erotic literature from time to time. There was no need to discuss such things. Right now, he had a promise to hold Danzo to. He was not here to discuss his reading habits. I guess it's true what they say. Kisame smirks. It's always the quiet ones. To which Itachi twitches, but that didn't stop him from continuing on his way to the Hokage Tower. He'd deal with Kisame later, because at that moment, Itachi Uchiha knew 3 things for certain. The first was that Suki was going to kill him. The second was that he would force Danzo to retract her missing nin destination, and finally, Kisame was going to regret teasing him. It really was that simple. Suki hated that she had to trick Naruto like this, but it had to be done. One way or another, she needed to know the truth, and Naruto would make finding it out difficult. He always threw himself into everything head first, and unfortunately, that wouldn't work in this case. So she had done the only thing she could do. Suki had distracted him with her sincere words of love and trapped him in a genjutsu. For now, that would have to be enough. Warning lime. Soft gentle kisses. Suki places them along the shell of Naruto's ear as her hands glide under his shirt. She meant everything she said to him. None of it had been a lie, but this was for his own good. That feels good. His words cause her to smile. That in his eyes. They were also so vibrant. So intense. Every emotion was displayed in them with startling clarity. There was no guile to Naruto. He was always honest. She moves back for a moment before tugging his shirt off slowly. Good. It's supposed to. The wonders of puberty and ninja training, she supposed. Gone was the scrawny boy that she used to bicker with as a genin. He'd been replaced by a fully grown man. Broad shoulders, sun-kissed skin, and well-sculpted muscles were on full display. Making her wish that this was actually real and that she wasn't just distracting him. So does this mean I get to take your shirt off too? Naruto grins up at her. He was far from a natural seducer, but he certainly got his point across. If you want to. Suki smiles at him. Naruto grins even more wildly. He couldn't believe this. Suki actually loved him and was letting him touch her. She wasn't running away. I think that I probably always knew, at least subconsciously. He slides her shirt off, marveling as more and more ivory white skin was exposed to his hungry eyes. That I loved you. Suki pauses as though thinking about something. Probably since at least Haku. That did explain a lot. Though what it didn't explain was since when did Suki wear bras that were made out of silk? She'd always been more practical than that. Then again, he hadn't seen her that much since they were genin. He liked the way the red silk contrasted against her skin and the sight of her scantily clad breasts a lot though. He understood what pervy sage was always going on about when he talked about women's breasts now. Naruto reaches for the clasp. If I'm completely topless, you should be too. He was likely going to get smacked for this, but well, he'd try anyway. That's fair. Suki helps him sit up and gets in his lap. Better to let me get it off then. I doubt you know how to handle the clasps. Amazing. Even when she was stripping for him, Suki still managed to insult him. He was about to tell her that he could so handle the clasp when Suki shimmies out of her bra and his throat suddenly went dry while his nose began to bleed. And well, he kinda forgot how to talk for a minute. You're cute. She shakes her head in amusement. You act like you've never seen breasts before. Suki reaches for his pants. You can touch if you want. It's only fair. Was she actually going for his zipper? Should he stop her? Probably, but if this was what Suki wanted, he'd go with it. Besides, it was hard to think when, well, something else was getting hard and quickly. You're beautiful. It sounded so lame, but it was true. There was something beautiful about the sight of Suki's creamy pale breasts with those rosy pink nipples. She was only half dressed and sitting his lap. A display of complete trust. Maybe that had something to do with the jolt of white-hot lust that was currently surging through his body. Suki smiles and kisses him as she tugs off his pants and boxers. You're sweet. An idiot, but sweet. Again with the insults. Never mind. He kisses back. He'd show her who was boss, Naruto thinks to himself as he kisses her hungrily. She'd given him permission, so he caresses her breasts. They were soft, warm, and squishy. The last part was fascinating for some reason, and he liked it when she moaned when he caressed and squeezed them. This was new. This was exciting. You can keep doing that. Suki moans softly into his ear as she kicks off her pants and a pair of matching red silky panties. And I'll do this. Suki takes his arousal into his hand and strokes. Suki. He feels his face burn with embarrassment, but it felt good. Why, you can definitely keep doing that. Really good. So he bucks into her hand instinctively as he fondles her breasts with one hand and trails his other down over her stomach. She smiles slyly at him. I will. Damn. That sly smile was quickly turning into a smirk. Like I said, Just relax and let me take care of everything. She begins to stroke him faster. Well, Naruto wasn't going to have her do everything, so he places his hand between her thighs. She was warm there. Warm and wet, which only had him bucking into her hand faster as he slowly slides his hand over her womanhood. He wasn't really sure what would feel good and what wouldn't. It was probably better to start off slow. NHH. N Naruto. Alright, that was definitely a good then. Just relax and let me take care of everything. He throws her earlier words back at her as Suki leans over and kisses him heatedly. Their hands were working each other faster and faster. She kept getting more wet, making exciting sounds, moans, mews, and even a whimper or two. Naruto had never been more aroused in his life. She was going to come. His fingers were now inside her and kept touching that spot. The spot that made her moan and see stars. Naruto. She was screaming, but Suki no longer cared. It felt too good to hold back. So she didn't. She came fast and hard and Naruto soon joined her. End of line. She takes one last glance at Naruto and sighs. I wish it were real. He was still trapped in her genjutsu. I'll be back soon. She kisses his forehead. I'm sorry. And with that, she takes off. Suki would make it up to him later. Right now, she had to find out the truth and keep Naruto safe. And really, what was wrong with making sure he was pleasantly distracted in the process? Obito chuckles from his position on a nearby tree branch. It seemed that Suki had opted to distract Naruto. Though he couldn't see what she had actually done to the boy, the blonde seemed more than content to stay in the cave for the moment. She really is Itachi's little sister. The woman was sneaky. It ran in the family, he supposed. Well, her methods weren't really the issue though. No matter how entertaining they might be, Suki was now one step closer to helping him with his plans. There was even a chance that the Jinchuriki would come to his aid. After all, he did love Suki and the leaf had hurt here. It was plausible. He watches as the woman races through the forest. Time will tell. His plan would succeed with or without them. Though Obito would prefer having their help to not having it. Young love was a beautiful thing. The world did love to crush it though. Rin would probably never forgive me. He knew that, and yet, if this had been done sooner, the woman might still be alive. He was doing the right thing. Obito Uchiha had no doubts about that. The ends justified the means in this case. Danzo sighs and shakes his head. The brat is going to be trouble. Lord Temporary. How dare the insolent whelp address him so disrespectfully? Children were so annoying. They always thought they knew better than their elders, and by the time they had learned their lesson, they were usually elders themselves. Itachi knew better though. Itachi had never disrespected his superiors. That's when Danzo hears a knock on the door. Come in. If the person was a threat, his guards would have taken care of it. Danzo Shimura knew that for a fact. That's when Guy and Kakashi both walk inside his office and Danzo's eyes narrow. So much for the guards doing their job. Those two weren't Kakashi and Guy. Who are you? I know you aren't really them. He immediately reaches for his sword. The imposters flicker behind him and grab him. I'm the one that you betrayed and his is my partner. The fake Kakashi's lips were practically on his ear and his voice was now more of a hiss than anything. It hasn't been that long. Has it, Danzo? Before he could answer, they were teleported out of the room and into the forest of death. Itachi. It was Itachi. Danzo had no idea how he had managed to sneak into the leaf undetected and with his partner to boot, but he wasn't going to die today. That was why he had come here. He was angry about his sister. Kakashi smirks and reassumes his true form. So does Guy. Instead of two of the Leaf's most well-respected ninjas, now two criminals stood before him. One criminal who was really a hero. We had an agreement. Though he looked far more like a demon at the moment. Those eyes. It was always those eyes. Even though Danzo had 10 Sharingans of his own, he never got used to seeing them. They were terrifying. That was before your sister joined the Sound Village and nearly killed several of our ninjas. His actions were justified. Itachi raises an eyebrow. I'm fully aware of Root. Of course, he was. You do not get to claim the moral high ground when it comes to my sister. I find her choice to join Orochimaru distasteful is because the leaf failed her. The leaf had failed her. That was ridiculous. She's lucky that you begged me to spare her. She'd be dead otherwise. I should have had you kill her along with the others long ago. She's nothing like you, Itachi. His eyes narrow. She thinks only of herself. That sounds familiar from where I'm standing. Kisame smirks as he swings the Samahata. I believe you're the scum who broke your promise to Itachi over here. He was getting lectured by the likes of Kisame. Ha! Preposterous. Danzo would strike him down where he stood. Stay out of this. The man disgusted him. This has nothing to do with you. You're merely an abomination that happened to be placed on Itachi's new team. Almost faster than he could blink, Itachi flew at him with a kunai raised. I never cared for you, but I mistakenly believed you to be a man of your word. Either revoke her classification as a missing nin or you will die here today. Itachi's eyes were hard as ice. I can promise you that much. You can't kill me. Danzo's voice sounded like an animal's even to his own ears. You're half dead and your partner is too much of a simpleton to ever stand against the power of the Sharingan. He undoes his bandages. That wasn't very nice. Kisame raises his blade. That hurt my feelings. Itachi, can I kill him? He looks at Itachi hopefully. Itachi nods at his partner. Yes, since he is being difficult, you may kill him. He pauses for a moment and adds, and make his death as painful as you like. So that's how it was going to be then. Itachi was finally going to betray the leaf and all for some brat, who didn't give a damn about this village. A brat who didn't understand the first thing about honor. Pathetic. How the mighty have fallen. Danzo sneers as he clashes with Itachi. Itachi was wielding kunais and Danzo had his sword. This would be interesting to say the least. He may be old, but Itachi was sick and the Uchiha would lose this fight. Itachi shakes his head and raises an eyebrow. I was about to say the same thing to you, actually. This insolent traitor would pay for mocking him. One way or another, Danzo Shimura would ensure that Itachi Uchiha didn't live to see another day. So this was how it would end. Danzo was not going to keep his promise to him or to revoke Suki's status as a missing nin. That meant he had to die. Drown him. Itachi glances at Kisame simply as he flickers into a nearby tree. It was a rather tall tree and would serve the required purpose for the moment. This will be fun. Kisame smirks, seeming positively delighted at the prospect of a good fight. Water style. Exploding water shock wave. As with most of Kisame's jutsus and the name would indicate, it was a water jutsu. One that allowed Kisame to expel a giant wave of water from his mouth and to ride the wave while his opponents were still struggling to find their feet. Damn the both of you. Danzo scarcely had time to undo the bandages on his arm and to activate his Sharingans before Kisame struck him with his sword. We're already damned, but thanks for the thought. His partner's grin never wavered, not even for an instant. Danzo wasn't actually cut by the mighty Samahata though. You've got to be kidding me. His body turned transparent and Kisame was left striking thin air. Itachi had expected that though. The traitor had 10 minutes where he was essentially invincible. Those Sharingans on his grotesque arm assured him of that much. They would have to be careful. You're far too arrogant. Danzo appears behind Kisame with a kunai he had infused with his wind chakra. The Viper wastes no time. Go to hell. He did what Danzo did best. He stabbed someone in the back. Itachi could see the wound. Certainly, his partner had survived far worse injuries. The blood dripping down onto the ground though, well, it was more worrying than the Uchiha really wanted to admit. That wasn't enough to distract him for long though. Kisame may have been arrogant, but he was far from the only one. As are you. Itachi flung his own kunais straight at Danzo. The kunais went straight through him though. That was only expected. Their battle was only just beginning. I should have had you killed after the massacre. Danzo reappears behind Itachi. Never did I think that you of all people would betray the Leaf Village and all for that damn brat. That woman isn't a brat. Itachi's eyes flash crimson red at Danzo in unsuppressed fury. She is my foolish little sister, and I assure you that she will outlive you by many years. Demonic illusions. Shackle stakes. He was now trapped in Itachi's genjutsu. Sharingan, and Danzo was having stakes driven through his body. He was screaming in pain. Itachi couldn't lie. There was something rather satisfying about hearing him cry out like that. Then again, revenge had always been a seductive emotion. He should know that better than anyone. After all, that is what he had manipulated his sister with. Damn you. Unfortunately, Itachi was well aware of Danzo's prowess with genjutsu. The man would break it soon enough. So he'd have to make this moment count. Fire style. Fireball jutsu. With that, he expels a giant fireball from his mouth and the flames slam into Danzo's paralyzed body, only to burn air. You'll have to do a lot better than that. Danzo reappears behind Itachi. Wind wave. He waves his hand and creates a large blade of wind that slices Itachi's arm as he manages to dodge. Blood was dripping from the wound. If he had been even half a second slower, the Uchiha was quite certain he would have lost his arm, and that simply wouldn't do. He'd likely have bled to death from blood loss, if the battle continued for too long. Itachi, are you alright? Kisami's voice rings out. Itachi nods as his eyes narrow at Danzo. Yes, I'll be fine. Well, he'd survive this battle anyway. It wouldn't be easy, but 3 of the other man's Sharingans had already closed. Once all 10 closed, he would be vulnerable again. Suki was heading towards the leaf to find Danzo, when she sees an ocean wave and hears the sounds of screams nearby. That could mean only one thing: combat was going on and Kisame was likely involved. And where there was Kisame, there was probably Itachi. She changes course and rushes towards the scene of battle. Suki immediately hides behind a tree in order to survey the situation properly, and her eyes widen at what she saw. Itachi and Kisame were fighting Danzo. He told the truth. That was the only logical explanation. Itachi would have no logical reason to challenge the 6th Hokage, if that wasn't the case. What would he gain from it? Nothing. No. Her brother was trying to ensure that his own secrets and those of the Leafs died with the old man. Hey, Itachi. Kisame grins. I can't let you have all the fun, can I? That's when Suki notices Kisame had placed his fingers on the water and was injecting his chakra into it. His chakra that had just turned some of the water into sharks. Water style. 5 hungry sharks jutsu. Sharks that were now circling Danzo in ripping him to pieces. No. She needed answers, damn it, and Itachi wasn't likely to give them to her. She was about to come to Danzo's aid when she saw that the sharks were biting thin air and Danzo had now reappeared behind Kisame. What the hell had just happened? That wasn't normal. It seemed that Danzo had some tricks up his sleeve, after all. Not good enough. The man slams a kick into Kisame's back. His apparently injured back, if the blood on the grass by Kisame was any indication, but Kisame grabs his foot and sends him flying into a tree. It wasn't enough to kill him though. Danzo immediately gets up and performs a summoning. Baku. Destroy them. The creature resembled a giant tapir. She'd never seen a summon like that before. It was also sucking everything around it into its mouth. She was being pulled towards it. Suki didn't have any choice but to call forth her own summon. Garuda. The giant hawk appears after she manages to summon it, and Suki was now sitting on its back looking at the battlefield below. Damn it. She had been spotted. The last female Uchiha had no choice now. She had to join the fight. The time to act was now. Naruto was still in the thrall of Suki's genjutsu, and the woman would likely be busy with Danzo for a while. Perhaps I can talk some sense into him while my dear little cousin indulges in her playtime. Obito chuckles as he darts into the cave. He quickly takes out a scroll and leaves a message for Suki. She'd be able to find him when the time was right. In the meantime, he had much work to do. Dear Suki, if you wish to see your fox again, meet me at the Valley of the End. I will be waiting as long as it takes. The one who told you the truth. Deeming that sufficient, Obito takes Naruto into his arms and quickly departs. It would likely take Suki hours to pry the truth from Danzo's dying hands, but he didn't want to take that chance. Besides, it would take time to convince Naruto of the rightness of his plans. Thankfully, Obito had one powerful advantage now. Love. Love always makes it easy to control people. People would do anything for the ones they loved. This Jinchuriki would likely prove no exception. Once Obito explained that he could create another world where Naruto could be with his most precious person, he was quite confident that the young ninja would be putty in his hands. There was only one problem. I have to hurry. He needed to get to the Valley of the End as soon as possible. It was important to get there before Suki. One needed time to prepare in matters like these. Danzo's eyes narrow as he sees an enormous hawk appear on the field. It seems that all your efforts were in vain, Itachi. He smirks at her. Hello, Suki. How delightful. The woman was here just as Itachi had shown his true colors. All these years, Danzo had thought that the Uchiha was loyal to the Leaf Village, but it seemed he had more love for his sister than for the entire ninja world. Itachi was far more foolish than he had ever anticipated. Oh well, he'd just kill them both and finally, they could be rid of all the Uchihas. Fire style. Dragon flame caterwaul. That's when the brat suddenly took a deep breath and expelled several fireballs from her mouth that were shaped like dragon heads. Careful about overeating. She glares at Baku. You might bite off more than you can chew. Damn it. The flames were sucked into the beast's mouth. It roars in pain and Danzo counterattacks. Wind style. Vacuum blast barrage. He takes a deep breath and launches several blades of wind at different angles. The last of Baku's suctions only made his attack stronger. This should cut the brat in half. The damn bird manages to dodge though and Suki comes flying at him. Chidori sharp spear. It was a spear made out of a blue lightning attack. A spear that managed to stab him at 5 meters away. Thankfully, he still had several Sharingans left. So the hit didn't actually land and Danzo was able to re-emerge behind Suki. I should have killed you years ago. He really should have. Wind style. Vacuum blade. Though his kunai infused with his wind chakra should do the trick. He moves to slit her throat only to be stopped by a powerful current of lightning. Chidori current. It wasn't enough to kill him, but it was painful enough that Danzo dropped his weapon. Lion's barrage. Suki jumps off of Garuda's back and launches a flurry of punches and kicks. Bone-crushing ones that send him spiraling to the ground, but he was able to grab her foot at the last minute and throw her straight into a nearby tree. Suki. Itachi's horrified cry was a delight to hear. Suki rises to her feet though and locks eyes with Danzo. That was a mistake. Coercion Sharingan. He had heard of this technique, but that didn't make it any less fearsome. The genjutsu forces a horrifying series of images on its victim. He feels himself sink to his knees at the sight of all those he had loved during over the years and then, a kunai against his throat before he disappears once more. That bitch had actually slit his throat while he was in the thrall of a genjutsu. Thankfully though, he just reappears in front of her as another Sharingan eye closes. This time, he would kill her. He raises another of his kunais and was in the process of stabbing her when he feels something slam into him. Don't touch my foolish little sister. A fist. A really large fist. It took Danzo a moment to realize what had just happened when he reappears only a few feet away from Itachi. The Susanoo fist. Itachi had killed him with it. Guys. Suigetsu wakes up only to notice something rather disturbing. Wake up. Suki was gone. Karen was the first to stir. That wasn't entirely surprising though. She had always been a light sleeper. The redhead shoots him a confused look. What's wrong? What's wrong? Well there, fearless leader, was gone and for some reason, Suigetsu doubted she had just walked off for no reason. There are tracks. Jugo tries to blink away the sleep from his eyes as he gestures towards them. If we follow the tracks, it'll lead us to Suki. Alright, that was a good point. Jugo was probably going to have to use his birds and other cute animals to do some more intensive tracking though. The Hazuka didn't understand the other man's natural affinity for wildlife, but whatever. It didn't matter because it worked. Use the birds too. Suigetsu figured he was probably the leader since Suki wasn't around. Karen gives him a dirty look. Who put you in charge? He did. That's who. The gentle giant shakes his head as he sends his birds off. It doesn't matter. We need to find Suki. Jugo strides off ahead of him. The two of you can bicker later. HMPF. Clearly, Jugo didn't understand the importance of making sure the Banshee knew who was boss. Never mind, Suigetsu sighs to himself as he follows Jugo with Karen doing the same. He could explain it to the other man later. Itachi. Suki. Kisami's voice startles Suki at first. Get out of the way. I'm gonna deliver number 8. Number 8. So that was what was going on. Danzo's arm was disgusting. It had 10 Sharingans on it and Suki knew there were only one of two ways that he could have gotten them. Grave robbing or having her family members murdered for their eyes before the massacre. I see that you've figured it out. Itachi grabs Suki by her waist and pulls her into a fist made out of chakra with him. Though it was becoming rapidly apparent he was making something far more complete. Yes, he has 10 Sharingans. Each Sharingan grants him 1 minute of invincibility. 10 minutes total. It would be more than enough to finish most battles, Suki observes. That's why no attack lands on him and he keeps reappearing. She watches Danzo with a sense of revulsion and awe at the power of such a morbid defense. Itachi nods at her. Precisely. He watches Kisame closely. Kisami's attack will close the 8th eye. That's when Suki sees something truly terrifying. Kisame had just used his chakra to form a wall of sharks. Many sharks. There had to be about 1,000 of them and they were all coming crashing down at Danzo. The apex predators tear into the man and there likely would have been blood everywhere, had it not been for Danzo's Sharingan trick. The one that made him essentially immortal for 10 minutes. 10 minutes might not sound like much, but it was everything in a battle like this. I call it water style. 1,000 hungry sharks. Pretty cool, huh? Kisame was actually showing off for her. Suki was now highly disturbed, but Danzo had suddenly appeared behind her and Itachi again. There was no time to ponder the matter as they whirl around to face him inside a giant person, made of her brother's orange chakra. Now, I've got you. Danzo smirks in triumph. Baku, lend me your aid. The giant beast tries to suck them in, creating more wind. Wind release. Vacuum serial waves. Several wind blades came at them and managed to slice through Itachi's defense. One of them narrowly misses, cutting Itachi in half, but it grazed his side. Blood was now dripping onto the ground and at that moment, Suki truly felt it. The masked man had told her the truth. In a strange way, Itachi was the victim in all this. Chidori. She charges at the other man and slams her fist into his chest. It only connected with air, but more importantly she made eye contact with him before Danzo disappeared. He reforms a few hundred feet away from them, but Suki smirks. This guy is really annoying, Itachi. Kisame grins at him as he waves his samahata. Can we turn him into shark food now? Suki never thought that it would happen, but she actually agreed with Kisame about something. She supposed that anything really was possible. Hopefully, that included Naruto being able to forgive her. Yes, we can. Suki nods as she hurls her next attack at Danzo. Chidori Senbon. The Uchiha woman summons thousands upon thousands of needles made out of her Chidori and sends them flying at Danzo's vital points. They strike true, but Danzo disappears once again. Damn you. He was furious and thought that he only had one more spare life left, but he was wrong. He had none. In this context, it is not my sister who is the one damned. Itachi borrows Suki's sword and charges at Danzo. It is you. Before she could do anything about such an occurrence, her brother had charged at Danzo and slammed it straight into one of his eyes. But how? It was a truly disturbing scene. The blood was gushing from the injury profusely and Danzo was on the ground, twitching in agony, but he wouldn't get away. This time, there would be no disappearing and reappearing. There would only be his death. My sister figured out how your Izanagi worked. Itachi smiles at him. You had 10 Sharingans, so you could die 10 times before your death became permanent. Danzo was still laying helplessly on the ground as he struggles to get up. I had another eye though. Indeed. Well, at least Danzo thought he did. No. Suki smirks at him. I used a genjutsu to make you think that you had another eye open. This time, you won't be getting back up and seeing as you seem to delight in wearing our family members' corpses to increase your own power. I'm going to enjoy watching my brother send you straight to hell. Itachi sighs as he yanks the sword out of Danzo's eye. Had you kept your promise and kept Suki safe, I would have allowed you to live. That was the last thing her brother said to the Viper before he slams his sword into Danzo's chest and ends his life. His lifeblood poured out of the wound fast and furious. Damn. That's a gusher. Much to Kisami's delight as Baku vanishes. After all, the summons master was no longer alive. There was no point for the poor beast to stick around. That's when a black sphere ejects from Danzo's body and pulls everything in its path inside it, along with Danzo's body. Suki, stay out of its path. Itachi grabs her and manages to get them out of range of the strange jutsu just before they would have gotten sucked in. What is that? Suki stares at the technique in confusion. Itachi sighs as he watches the sealing process. Reverse 4 symbols sealing. It draws everything into its path inside it along with the corpse. That made sense. His secrets will be protected even in death and no one will be able to dissect his body. A body that would have been worthy of dissection, Suki was sure. He had been a monster, but a powerful one. His body modifications were fascinating from a purely medical perspective, but disgusting from a moral one. I don't care what happens to his body all that much. Suki glares at the black sphere. Just as long as he's gone. A wise way to view things. Itachi nods sagely as Kisame strides over to them and grins. To which Suki raises an eyebrow. Gods and goddesses only knew what was on that man's mind now. So I'll leave you two alone for a bit to have your family bonding. Ah, that. Before either of them could say anything, Kisame takes off. Damn, Kisame could be a sneaky son of a bitch, when he wanted to be, Suki observes. Foolish little sister. Itachi shakes his head. Aren't you forgetting something? He gestures to Garuda. Oh right, she should probably send her summon away. Garuda, you may go back now. No sooner were the words spoken than the hawk disappears in a puff of smoke. As she glances at her elder brother though, Suki immediately regrets that decision. Now, there was absolutely nothing to distract the two of them from talking about everything, and Suki had no idea what she was going to say to Itachi about any of it. At that moment, Naruto snaps out of the genjutsu and looks around in confusion. Suki. Where was she? For that matter, where was he? Oh good. A man wearing an orange mask smiles at him. You're awake. He was in the Valley of the End, but Suki wasn't here. That and this guy was. Who was he? Naruto eyes him warily as he immediately gets up. Who are you and where is Suki? If this guy had hurt her, he was so dead. This one has a Sharingan. Tread carefully. Wait. What? I am Madara Uchiha. He smiles at him. Your lover left you in a cave while she went to speak with Lord Danzo. She what? I imagine that she wanted to keep you away from the battlefield as she feared for your safety. That did sound like Suki. She had a habit of trying to run off into dangerous situations and leaving him behind. Was it wrong that he was seriously considering getting a leash for his girlfriend or at least some chakra cuffs? No, I would say she's done more enough to deserve it. Damn right. Besides, I think she'd look rather attractive in either. Silver would probably look better than gold on her. The perverted fox had thought about this way too much. Well, I've got to go to her now. Before she got hurt, Danzo was still the temporary Hokage and she was a missing nin. What was she thinking? Was Suki trying to get herself killed? Madara chuckles at that and shakes his head. Aren't you curious as to what could compel her to rush straight towards the man who ordered her execution? That was a good point. What had this guy told her? It must have been good because usually even Suki wasn't that reckless. What did you say to her? Naruto's voice came out as more of a growl than anything, even to his own ears. Madara smiles pleasantly behind his mask. I told her the truth. The truth. That the leaf ordered the massacre. Naruto's eyes widen at that. It couldn't possibly be true. The leaf would never do something like that. Not the village that he loved. Sure, Danzo was evil, but the third never would have sanctioned such a thing. You're lying. Naruto lunges at him in a blind rage as Madara narrowly avoids the attack. He just smirks at him, a Sharingan watching him with amusement. If you truly thought that, you wouldn't be so upset. This guy was playing mind games with him. And I think that deep down, you know that.